Hi and welcome to Morbid History. In today's episode we're going through some of the...
Cat. She likes to eat plastic. Nej, inte nu älskling. Är du klar?
Hi and welcome to Morbid History, where we talk about weird and macabre things from our dark past. And today we're delving into a few mysteries and oddities that I've come across during my little ADD autism research sessions. That was a hard word. Yeah, let's get into it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Mwah.
Every job must be carefully analyzed.
Ramble number 1. The glass delusion. In the 16 and 1700s, a delusion stumped doctors and physicians back then as they do today. And the main symptoms were overwhelming melancholia, sadness, and the fixed idea that they themselves were made out of fragile glass and ready to shatter at any touch, at any moment. Okay, well, I'd be scared too if I really thought that I was made out of glass. So I can't blame them there. It was thought that it was caused out of melancholia, which was, well, that's an entire video of itself with the 4 humors and stuff like that. But you were melancholy and you were feeling fragile, so why not be glass? It was only the noble and rich of Europe who were affected for some reason. Well, the reason was that glass was a very new and novel thing. And of course it was way too expensive for any old peasant to go buy some glass. No, this was new and fancy only for the noble and the rich. So of course they were the ones taking it all in and obviously taking it too far for some. They almost saw glass when it was new as something magical, something to do with alchemy, since you have to mix different things to get to this weird new magic material. They could see themselves in mirrors in different ways and wow, cool. Everything was new and just unexplainable to them. Books written by physicians, again, back then, tell of unnamed nobles and royals who thought a very common one was that their butts were made out of glass and that it would shatter if they went to the loo. So they didn't go, or they strapped pillows and soft materials around their bums so that it wouldn't break when they sat down on the loo, or anywhere else for that matter. And one of these unnamed nobles mentioned in these books proudly and firmly proclaimed that he was indeed a whole glass vase. Well, either way, some famous victims to the glass delusion. We start with a king of France, Charles VI. He was, king of France. He was known as the Beloved in the beginning of his reign, but then it changed into the Mad. He was already predisposed to bouts of depression, melancholia, paranoia, and psychotic breaks and stuff. You know the things. Hallucinations. He wasn't all there, so people weren't very surprised, I guess, when he proclaimed that he was indeed made out of glass. No one could touch him or come near him, and he reinforced his clothes with metal so that they would protect him from anything that could break him. And then we have another one who was very late into all this, like in the 1800s, the Princess of Bavaria, Alexandria. She had a fun variant of the glass delusion. One day, the consorts in the royal palace found her walking very strangely, and like she was walking like, you know, through a door vertically like that as to not bump into that terrible wall. The courtiers asked, "Hey, what you doing there, Alexandria?" And she proclaimed that she had just realized that when she was a child, she had swallowed an entire full-size grand piano made out of glass. And now she was afraid that anything she did would shatter it inside of her. How it remained intact from her childhood into later years, she could not explain that. So yeah, nobles way back then thought that they were made out of glass, their butts were made of glass, or they had swallowed a grand glass piano. You go into that rabbit hole if you like. Next one! Our next ramble is the world's most mysterious book. A small little piece that was apparently made sometime around 1400, and studies into it shows that it was made somewhere in Italy. But that's pretty much all we know, because it's very mysterious indeed. The book is named after a man called Wilfrid Voynich. I don't know, please let me know down below how to pronounce that, but he purchased and got a hold of the books or the manuscript sometime in 1912, and he studied it and tried to decipher it thoroughly. The latest known mention of the book was an alchemist in Prague in the 1600s who also tried to decipher it. There's a letter that was found where he was sending it to some minister or priest or whatever, asking for help in doing so, but no, they did not succeed. No one has been able to decipher this weird language or its weird imagery. It's 240 pages of an unknown language and fantastical, colorful drawings. It ranges, it seems like at least, from "Hi, this is I from the future, here editing as one does," and apparently I decided to go full ramble rogue in this episode and totally ignore my script like the plague, so I'm here to save myself. The book is chaptered into such themes as herbal, astronomical, balneological, cosmological, pharmaceutical, and recipes. Also, lots of ladies in their natural state, usually in some kind of strange pool, bathing. And we don't know why. Even most of the plants in the botanical section and the medical section don't correspond or correlate to any known species of plants that we know today. Someone clearly took a lot of time and effort into making it. That's for sure. Did they do it just to be confusing? Were they trying to write something down in very cryptic coding? I really want to know why some of these naked ladies are pushing their limbs into tubes. Is an entire section dedicated to plumbing with women? Well, they do seem to like the women bathing, so that would make sense. Theories are abound. There's plenty of theories. It would need an entire episode of its own. Let me know down below if you want that. Either way, it's a weird little book, and you go into that rabbit hole. It'll be fun, I promise. Next one. Hi, yes, a new outfit. Another day, another sleigh, as the kids say. Let's move on. So, the next oddity from history. Imagine surviving Titanic. That's odd. No, not really. Imagine doing that. That's what Violet Jessup did. But yeah, she survived the Titanic, which she worked on. But not only did she do that, she managed to be on Titanic's sister ships, 2 of Titanic's sister ships, when they too encountered disaster. Let's get into it. Violet Jessup, she was born in Argentina to Irish immigrant parents. The year 1887. She was one of many children. At some point when she was in her 15, 16, they started getting the tuberculosis, as one did back then. Her father sadly passed, and she and the rest of her family moved back to Europe, specifically Britain. They moved to Britain, not Ireland, to Britain. There, her mother, or I think her mother had always worked as a stewardess, and Violet, Miss Jessup, she wanted that life too, working as a stewardess on boats. Good and dandy. It's said that she was so pretty that no one would hire her, because she would cause distraction. But she got hired to the White Star Line, because she came there dressed in her worst. And it worked. She got hired. To everyone's dismay. Thing was that the White Star Line had started making these giant ships. This was the time and place for those giant cruise line ships. Everyone were very much into them. So they made big boats, pleasing the crowd. And 3 of them were the Titanic, the Olympic, and Britannic. Most people would be thrilled to get to work on these ships back then. They were the most modern and awesome thing around. So Violet did that, yeah. She was around 20 when she started on her ocean-bound tragedy. In 1911, she started working on the Olympic. When it crashed into another war vessel on a boat, a big boat, they crashed. Violet was on it. There was no fatalities, so Violet soldiered on, of course. She even continued working on the Olympic because it survived the crash and everyone survived, so no one was thinking much of that. But then she got recruited to go and work on Titanic on her maiden voyage, and we all know what happened there. Do we even need to... Many fatalities, many. But not Miss Jessop. She survived by being plopped into one of the lifeboats after helping other people because they were prioritizing the women and children. She even got a child thrown onto her as she was sitting on the lifeboat, and once they came to land, some woman she did not know ran up to her, took the child while crying and ran away, so she didn't know what happened to that baby. Hopefully that was the baby's real mother. So that was a tragedy and a half. Most people would not want to even consider life at sea after these 2 events. But not dear Violet. No. A few years later, she was on the Britannic. In 1916, when it boated its way into a mine. Do boats drive? It floated into a mine. Either way, there were minor casualties, this time around 30 people, and Violet was not one of them. No, she survived. Came onto land. But nearly didn't, because she had coordinated so that everyone got on the lifeboats, maybe a bit too early, and the lifeboats were in the water and were being drawn into the giant propeller thingies and were getting sucked in, so everyone had to jump off the lifeboats, and Violet did that, and she hit her head very badly, but she did indeed survive and went to dry land, and that would have been the end of it. Yes, no. She continued working. She didn't actually retire from being a stewardess until 1950, to all boat enthusiastic people's great pleasure, I could imagine. She lived well on into her 80s when she dearly departed in 1971. Either way, yeah, that's just... Okay. You go on, boat lady. Why? Someone must have thought her cursed at some point. Well, either way, they called her the Unsinkable lady. Didn't anyone stop to think not to place her on a boat again? It is what it is, and that's what it was. on to the next one, and the last one. And the last one is Vampire Panic, the tragedy of Mercy Brown. In 1892, a very demised lady was taken out of her resting place, examined, and had her heart and liver ripped out, burned into ash, which was then mixed into a tonic that was given to her younger brother to ingest. Why? Vampire mania. Everyone and a half were dropping off by tuberculosis. We all know that, don't we? And sometimes medical nonsense just isn't enough. Folklore is the way to go here, of course. The thing was that Mercy Brown, who was she? Well, she was the daughter of a man, Mr. Brown, and he had sadly lost his wife and many of his children, including Mercy, to tuberculosis. Lore during this time for the folk was that if a family was presented with many demises in one family in a short time, it could only have to do with some kind of curse of the undead. They pestered the poor man who had lost almost his entire family to dig up his poor children so that they could examine them and really make sure that none of them were a vampire or an undead who came back. And Mercy's youngest brother was sick by this point, and they thought that if one of the other demised children were a vampire, they were the ones to blame, and the only way to save him was to stop the vampire. So yeah, Mr. Brown went ahead and dug up a few corpses, one of them being Mercy Brown. The others, besides Mercy, had been lying in the ground for quite a while, a few months at least in the ground. And they were satisfactory in their decomposition, I'm guessing. They were fine. Mercy, they thought, she still has blood in her organs and she doesn't look decomposed at all. She is a vampire. Thing was that she wasn't even buried. She had been demised for 2 months and she was in an vault above ground. This was winter, it was cold. She was pretty much in a freezer. That explains the lack of decomposition. But no, they decided she was coming back to life as a vampire, and they took out her heart and liver, as we said, and they burned them, mixed them into a tonic, and gave them to her younger brother, who did not survive. No, he did pass away 2 months later. Hopefully they thought it was a good choice either way. Hey, at least they did something. Thank you so much for watching, and giant thanks to my lovely, lovely Patreons. You're my heroes. If you want to support the channel, find links down below for my Patreon and Ko-fi if you want to leave a tip. And also I have a shop where I make some handmade crafts. So yeah, like and subscribe and comment down below. Stay amazing, stay hydrated, but most of all, stay morbid. Bye bye!